Get on wrenchnation.tv. Of course, Fireball Tim, award-winning designer. In fact, we're proud to announce we've got a coloring book coming out. I mean, up there with Magnus Walker and Sid Mead and all. And I think that's really cool. Electric vehicles are here. And one of the first, in fact, the first, I should say, commercial independent Tesla service organization that is providing engineering and aftermarket support, Gruber Motor Companies, which is led by Pete Gruber and his team. They offer services ranging from ESS battery pack repairs and module upgrades while providing an economical approach. Not cutting corners.
Right.
Nobody wants to cut corners.
Have to have quality.
But an economical approach at a component level without compromising the quality you deserve for your Tesla. Pete Gruber's on hold. Let's bring Pete in. Pete, welcome to Wrench Nation.
Well, thank you for having me, guys.
Yeah, welcome.
Pete, that was a boatload. You guys are doing some great things up there in North Phoenix, and you're in our backyard. You're a quiet gem hiding back there. How are you?
Doing well, yes. And, I didn't know we were that quiet, though. These days, we've got a social media team that is just plastering us all over the globe. But
yes, you are. Actually, you're doing an amazing job. For you listening, ensure that you get on to, let's just say it. What's the YouTube channel so we can get folks onto it?
YouTube channel, Gruber Motors, and we also have a live podcast every Tuesday and Thursday at 8:30 Mountain Standard Time.
You're out there educating, you're sharing with the world. Currently, Tesla seems to be right around that 65-70%-ish market share. You've been in the industry for a long time. Can we kind of go back and talk about how you got started before you even decided, hey, there's an opportunity to get in the EV space in the aftermarket?
Absolutely. For me personally, I've always had two passions. It started with electronics as a kid, and then later on cars. Very much into muscle cars, rebuilt a bunch of Mopars, owned an ACR Viper, had a Ferrari for 23 years, loved cars. And my wife in the 90s and I decided to go a little bit greener by getting Priuses in the 90s. And it was my daily driver. And the Priuses have a battery problem. It's a pretty expensive replacement, and we wanted to trade up to something else before those batteries went bad. So I needed another daily driver. And I thought, this time I'm going to go battery electric vehicle, BEV, 100% electric rather than a hybrid. And I looked on Craigslist and I looked on eBay, and I found a Tesla Roadster for sale. It was a black one, and it was in Los Angeles. Started a contact process, and I suspected it was George Clooney's Roadster because of the description, and there was a personal assistant involved, and they said it was celebrity-owned, but they couldn't tell me who it was, that type of thing.
Because the Roadsters, there weren't many. Yeah. I mean, that was pinnacle for the start of Musk and his team. And here you are, you're out there grabbing a Roadster. Can I ask how many Roadsters at that time were available? Yeah.
Well, they built 2,400 of them globally. And today, we've got a census program on our website where we track the owners of the Roadsters, and they're about 1,700 that we've accounted for. So there aren't that many left. And in 2013, when I was looking at getting into an electric vehicle, I had never even heard of a Tesla Roadster, honestly, and was pretty impressed with its design. It's a Lotus Elise body, basically.
Right.
So it's a sports car. And being a sports car guy, that appealed to me. But what I ended up doing was I talked to a friend of mine in town here before I flew to L.A. to look at the car, who had a Roadster, and I asked him how he liked it, and he said, I love it, but there's a problem with it. I've got two little girls, and the passenger airbag does not turn off, and I just don't want to take the risk. So are you interested? We struck a deal, and the next thing you know, I've got my daily driver Roadster. Wow. I drove the car for a year, and one day I'm taking my lunch pail out of the back of the car, And one of our field engineers who works in our critical power division, we have a nationwide critical power service division and sales division that repairs uninterruptible power systems and lighting inverters and in large data centers. And he asked me, he says, what is that black box that was sitting there in my trunk? And I said, well, that's a three-phase inverter. And he said, really? I told him a bit more about it, and he says, we repair those. And guys, I don't understand why, but prior to that time, it never occurred to me that we've been in the Tesla repair business all along.
That's amazing. Wow. It comes full circle.
Yeah. What's in a Tesla is identical to what's in a data center in an uninterruptible power system. You have a DC plant or a DC source. You've got a three-phase inverter that converts all that DC to electricity for all of your servers and all the equipment. Mm-hmm. The only difference is in the car, it's driving a three-phase AC induction motor, and you don't have all the servers to contend with.
So it was really it seemed to be a natural segue. Yeah. Your passion for cars, your experience in the industry, it just seemed to be a natural play to go from that to. So what were you thinking back then, Pete? I mean, did you want to start a couple of bays? How did that, from a business model, start for you?
Well, it happened fairly quickly. The more I thought about it, I thought, you know what, he's absolutely right. That weekend, I went out on Craigslist again, and this time I typed in Tesla Roadster service. And, there was very little information about Tesla Roadsters at that time, but I happened to come across a guy that was advertising Tesla Roadster service repair. And I contacted him. It turns out that he had quite a few technical skills. We needed a tech manager in our critical power division, and I said, look, why don't you interview for this position, but at the same time, I want to intrigue you with the notion of taking us into the Tesla repair space along with this job that you're applying for. Well, we hired him. He ended up having a contact up in the Bay Area that had a Tesla Roadster at a Tesla service center. Well, Tesla service centers do not repair anything. They swap modules, they swap subassemblies, they swap giant batteries, right? So this customer was faced with what on the surface appeared to be a simple repair. It was a burnt-up fan connector. But the only option that they presented him was replace the PEM for $10,000. A PEM, by the way, is a power electronics module, which is the three-phase inverter.
Wow.
So faced with that $10,000 repair, our manager intrigues him with the notion of sending the car to us, and we'll fix that PEM. The car gets here. Not only did we repair the problem with the PEM, but we completely upgraded and rebuilt his PEM, which is, by the way, another concept that most EV owners seem to miss.
Well, let's talk about that, the upgrade. I want to interject real quick. Of course, we do have quite a few Tesla owners listening to the show, but here you are, you're on this mission. You didn't really get a whole lot of help, and perhaps that's gotten a little better, but nowhere where it needs to be by way of Tesla feeding information to you to make your day happy.
Right.
When you're talking about replacing a pigtail and then doing this upgrade, you're also talking about software and writing code, from my understanding, right? And so talk to us about that journey, because folks listening now don't understand. A lot of these mechanics and technicians, they don't get that side of what that looks like for the future.
Well, at that time that Roadster showed up here, Roadster or a Tesla wouldn't give us the time of day. We were a competitor. We were an unknown. There's no support whatsoever. Schematics, test, drawings, test points, even parts. So what they didn't realize is that we're very familiar with that process, because in the critical power business for 30 years, we have the same problem. The manufacturers don't like competition. So they intentionally avoid competition. They don't give them any support, and some even design elements into their product to limit the ability for competitors to be successful. Padlock software is one of them, proprietary software. So at that time, we simply applied the same skills that we had honed for 30 years in the critical power business and reverse engineered the Tesla Roadster. And that's how we developed our expertise and our ability to understand and repair these vehicles, the electronics in these vehicles.
Along with repairing, upgrade, software, and so on, when you started, I imagine there would have been a natural segue also into the sale of these vehicles. Could you talk to us about the different divisions that you have there at Gruber Motor?
Right. The sale of Teslas, of course, is controlled by the company. They don't work through dealers. They don't set up resellers. One thing that we do, however, is we have a free Tesla Roadster matchmaking site on our website, which gives the sellers an alternative to expensive auction houses who take a large chunk of commission and really aren't equipped to sell a Tesla product because they don't understand the technology. With us, when somebody lists a Roadster with us for sale, both the buyer and the seller get tech support. It comes along with the territory.
So it's a full concierge level of service, Greg. I like that idea.
That's a great idea.
Yeah, because, you can't. Tesla's got it wrapped up.
Yeah, locked down.
To a point. When you have terminology like padlock software,
I know.
They're not going to let you just freely sell these. If you're listening, get on to GruberMotors.com and you can check that out. There's a whole slew of sections, Roadsters for sale, services, gallery, newsletter, and so on. Pete, you've been able to swiftly, with a great team, manage to overcome some serious trials and tribulations. Those of us that have been in the industry as sort of traditional brick and mortar automotive service centers and at that doing well by their communities, the consumer, by the folks they employ, look at this and say, this is a whole different ball of wax. I want to get into the meat of it. If you can offer some recommendations, I would like to invest into something similar to what you're doing. What challenges am I going to have?
Well, the first thing is an existing shop that specializes in wrenching and mechanical type repairs is going to have an extraordinarily difficult time pivoting into the type of work that we do. I hate to say this because the majority of your audience, of course, are people in that situation.
We need the truth. We need the truth, Pete. Give us the truth, right, baby.
Don't hold back.
Don't hold back. And by the way, I've got to mention this because we're flowing on this. Please, people, get on to Pete's YouTube.
Yeah.
Because one of the ways I said, man, I got to have Pete on is you came out with a very, very well presented video about what you're going to say here in just a moment about, hey, gang, mechanic, technician, if you're going to move towards the future, I'll allow you to continue, Pete. You're going to need these skill sets.
Yeah. The difficulty that we face, everybody asks, are you going to scale? Are you going to open in L.A.? Are you going to open overseas? We can't. We can't find people that can do this type of work. And the primary reason is you need three distinct skills, and they don't happen to come in the same package. The first skill is you need an electronics background. You need to know what a diode and a choke is and what a MOSFET does and how to use the test equipment to troubleshoot. Now, if you were a factory-authorized shop, which, by the way, there aren't any factory-authorized EV franchises yet, it would be much easier because you would have access to a variety of parts. In our space, in the independent world, we don't have a large parts room that we can go in and pull modules and subassemblies. We're forced to troubleshoot and repair right down to component level, which means opening up that big battery pack, opening up that three-phase inverter, chip chasing right down to the transistors, to the choke, the chips, or whatever, or the diodes. And that skill, of course, comes with people that are well-trained in electronics technicians. The second skill that you need to work on these cars, it's all about software, firmware, Linux-based, CAN signals. So having a software background is also vital. And then the third one is wrenching, being able to work on the mechanical portions in the car. We've been unable to find those three skills in one individual, so we tend to break it apart into teams. If I try to take the guys that work in the electronics lab and have them go out and do a brake job, they don't want to get grease under their fingernails. The guys that don't mind getting grease under their fingernails can't come in the lab and change and chip chase that electronics module or that board. So I don't know what the answer is short term for these schools. By the way, we have schools that come to us, UTI, MEC here locally, the Extension Center, and they ask us to look at their curriculum. You know, how can we make our training more relevant to the future? And it's a daunting task. I don't have a simple solution for them.
It's a large order. It's good at this point. I mean, California has said 2035 ICE vehicles going to be gone. I mean, I think we have some time yet. But Pete, could you give us a quote about how many of these Teslas actually are going to be just overflowing to the point where Tesla just can't keep up? Do you have some statistics on that level?
I don't have statistics, but if you guys look at the aggressive production, the projections, like for take Lucid for example, even Rivian. I don't think there's any way that any of these EV producers, once they get their act together and start, and the assembly line is running 100%, are going to be able to build the service delivery system to keep pace with the number of vehicles they're cranking out. Even if those vehicles were 100% flawless without any bugs in them, which of course is not going to be the case. That's why Tesla shops are so full of warranty work, is because of all of the unanticipated problems, since they're not a mature auto manufacturer. I think that the future is going to be that these manufacturers are going to have to outsource. The difficulty they're going to face is there are very few of us out here that have the type of skills that can accept a Lucid project and start doing warranty work for them, or Rivian, or Solo, or any of these other EV manufacturers, even Tesla for that matter.
That's phenomenal. Yeah, that's just there's a big wall in front of us.
There is. My vision of the future to solve this problem is going to be smart cars, putting AI into the cars where they become self-diagnosing. Just to give you an example of what already exists, every Tesla is a node on a network, and there's a mothership in Fremont that actually knows where every single car is, where, how fast it's going, what it's doing, how long it's sitting in that parking lot at that restaurant, and what type of problems or what type of errors it's reporting. That information can now be digested and fed back to a service center. If the charge port door is starting to stick, for example, the car can send that information to the mothership. It contacts the local service center and says, do you have the part in stock? And if the answer is yes, they notify the owner and say, you should really take your Tesla down to the Scottsdale Service Center. We are going to need to replace your charge port door before it fails completely. That technology already exists. Now, you can go a step further with full self-driving. If the car realizes it's got a problem and the service center has the part, that car could drive itself to the service center, and a loaner could have been dispatched before it left. So the following morning, the owner wakes up and says, oh, it looks like I've got a loaner today to drive, without needing to be involved. Now, what that also does is it removes the sophisticated skill level necessary from the technicians or mechanics, I don't know what to call them anymore, so that we get back to the simpler module swapping philosophy.
That's
so anyway,
fascinating.
That's my vision.
You just, for some reason, I thought of the elevator man. It kind of where we're headed as mechanics.
Right?
And I say that respectfully. I think many of us in the industry, we actually look forward to the next leap, and I don't think it's an impossibility. I hear what you're saying regarding autonomous. We had Gridlock Sam Shorts on, New York City, former New York City traffic commissioner. He comes out with a book. It's a No One Behind the Wheel. His prediction is that you could be arrested for driving in mid-century. So I guess we're not too far away. But Pete Gruber, I want you to hang tight with us. We're going to take a quick break, come back, talk more about the business side, some more under hood talk right here on Wrench Nation. so much joining with us every week, your automotive lifestyle show. On the phone, we've got Pete Gruber, Gruber Motor Company. I invite you to visit grubermotors.com for more details. Welcome back, Pete.
Well, thank you. Yes.
We appreciate you spending time. You guys are extremely busy up there. And there was a question that came in. Does your work void any warranty with Tesla?
No, it does not. And let me explain that a bit further. Initially, Tesla was confused by our success and who we were. As the years progressed, they actually began to reach out to us for parts initially. And now we have a strong partnership. We help them with the legacy Roadster parts. In fact, we're part of their procurement team. And we share tech tips with them. We share schematics with them. And which is really enjoyable because in the critical power space, we never reach that level of cooperation and support. But with Tesla, a completely different animal. They are very supportive. And so to answer the question, it does not void warranty.
Yeah, excellent, because we've got folks listening that we definitely want to send your way, well worth the visit and so on. Some would say that if we can talk maybe not politics, but sort of government and regulations and so on, they're not too friendly with Mr. Elon Musk. It seems like not only is it an uphill battle for him to produce one of the most difficult things ever, times 4 maybe when you think SpaceX and so on, but to start a automobile company, manufacturing company, is a large measure. And then to have all of this sort of mud being thrown at you, what do you think Elon Musk sees regarding the future? He's been quoted as saying, hey, I want all of us to succeed. Obviously, he wants to sell a ton of Teslas, and that's the mission at its very root. What do you think Elon Musk is thinking regarding the competitive fields with folks like Rivian? We know that the Chevy Equinox is coming out here another year or so, full-on EV. Where do you see Elon's thought process on the landscape of competition?
Well, I've talked to Elon a few times, and I find Elon very refreshing as a businessman. Unlike some business owners that are fairly myopic, that attempt to kill competition, I find that Elon actually has a much broader vision in mind, and the goal, of course, is to heal this planet and to take us into sustainable energy use. Just like Nikola Tesla, who was willing to share patents, unlike his contemporary Thomas Alva Edison, who was a patent troll. Elon is much more like Nikola Tesla.
Yeah, I mean, he is sharing patents, of course, not recent. I think there's a few years time span, but I read that and I thought that's incredible. I mean, the bigger mission is to do that, is to make a greener planet. And it just, in observation, and then there's a lot of noise out there, but in observation, it just seems like he gets a lot of heat from sort of the anti-Tesla crowd, or just maybe anti-EV. And we get it. There are oil lobbyists out there. And could you talk to us about that? There seems to be some confusion regarding the carbon footprint from A to Z in manufacturing an electric vehicle. Could you set us straight with that? I mean, it's still a lot cleaner than anything crude oil based, for sure.
It's still a lot cleaner, and of course, the direction, is definitely the right one for us to go in. Elon is he's philosophical about the attacks that are coming his way. That ridiculous statement that GM is leading the EV charge. I mean, that was so blatantly false and silly that everybody saw through it immediately. And Elon saw humor in it, as did the rest of us. There's some really great things happening in the EV space. J.B. Strobel, for example, was the CTO of Tesla for 14 years, close relationship with Elon and the team there. He started Redwood Materials, which is a battery recycling operation. And he actually has the company now to where they have a zero waste stream. And the over 90% of the materials in a lithium-ion battery pack are fully recyclable, from cobalt to stainless steel to the lithium. And they're now building a plant real close to one of Elon's plants, so the supply chain problems are much shorter than they were when they were bringing lithium in from South America. There's some great visionaries that are involved in this alternative energy program, and it's not just Elon. There are many others, and very committed people at Tesla to that goal. It's an exciting time, and
I love the idea, Pete, regarding, because there was a lot of attack on the fact that sort of these rare earth metals, they're not infinite and so on. And here we have redwood materials, which creates this whole circular supply chain, which would have been sort of the next natural step. And I think that's really amazing because it limits, right, what we're doing for waste and how we do look from a green, carbon-free world that we all deserve to live in. I have to ask you regarding batteries. I have got a lot of technicians out there that are hybrid techs, and the Prius you had mentioned earlier. There's obviously that's been in the fleet for many years. In fact, Toyota, yes, they've had issues with their battery, but overall it was fairly stable platform. Could you talk to us about what you're seeing in the Tesla batteries, and does the battery completely have to be replaced all the time like that?
Well, at this point in the evolution of the batteries, yes, a complete replacement is the most cost-effective way of handling it, unless you have shops like us that will actually go inside and repair. And, of course, there are very few of those. The nice thing about this new transportation revolution is, we spent a century with virtually the same technology in the ICE vehicle world or the fossil fuel burners. Now that we've moved transportation into electronics, we're going to see exponential improvements, as we've seen with electronics since even the last century. There is a lot of great stuff happening with batteries, and despite the fact that we have a great relationship with Tesla, there's certain things they don't share with us, like their forward-thinking a development with things like battery technology. But I can assure you that this is a temporary problem. The high cost of batteries, the size of batteries, the weight, all of that will improve dramatically as things continue to evolve technically. You take a company like Aptera, who actually put solar cells on the top of their car that can go 40 miles just on a solar charge. That is just the tip of the iceberg. I mean, the future is going to be much more of that type of technology, including inductive coupling, which is charging methods without connecting to anything while you're driving. There are already roads in, I think, Israel, and I forget what the other country was, where they have experimental roadways where you're actually charging as you're driving.
Yeah, and the technology is just coming so fast. I want to talk about the reliability, and of course, we're open for everyone to succeed. We're not beating anyone up, but Sandy Munro, I mean, he's a legend as an automotive industry engineer, known as the tear-down titan. That's what he does for a living. He makes your stuff better. He'll tear it down. He's tore down quite a few electric vehicles. I believe most, if not all. It's been his mission for the last few years, him and his team there at Munro. And he was quoted as saying that Tesla is almost light years away by the rest of the field. And again, we want to be respectful and mindful for those in the space. But I've got to ask you, do you see the manufacturing landscape changing dramatically, short of going out of business if we don't catch up to the technology? Are you fearful of what that landscape could look like in terms of what Tesla has now in technology? Again, I don't want to mention names, but what does manufacturing look like for a lot of these folks that traditionally weren't software heavy and software based? They are now. They're kind of matching up software and hardware. How do you see that?
Well, without mentioning names, there are some incumbents that may not make it. And it's going to be very difficult for a company that has production lines, mature production lines, and union labor, different type of labor costs, and a missing skill set to pivot quickly enough to switch over. The newcomers have a much easier time because they're developing new infrastructure. And, of course, like you mentioned, Tesla has a quantum lead over the majority of them. But that doesn't mean that, the newcomers aren't going to succeed. The ones I'm concerned about are the incumbents, the ones that have been supplying us cars for the last 100 years.
Yeah, it's my feeling as well. And again, we hope everyone makes it, but the facts are the facts. Let's speak on facts. Some in the consumer world have a sort of, especially with Ian that just took place. Could you talk to us about how safe these batteries are? There were some saltwater issues with sort of compromise in these battery packs. Was this sizzle in the media? How safe are these batteries in regards to moisture and specifically saltwater?
Comparatively speaking, when compared to ICE vehicles, EVs are infinitely safer than the ICE vehicles when it comes to igniting and fire. We presented some statistics in a podcast a couple of weeks ago, and I can't quite remember what that was, but it was a substantial difference. Of course, the EVs catching fire get all the press because that's what people are concerned about. It's new, it's different, it's unknown, and we fear the unknown. As technology continues to improve, one of the brightest things on the horizon regarding battery technology is moving from lithium to graphene. And in terms of the amount of product available, graphene is carbon. I mean, it's one of the most plentiful elements on Earth. And it's also much safer. It does not ignite. It does not burn if punctured. And it's going to be lighter. It's going to give greater range. But we have to give these companies a chance to develop the technology and debug, what they're working on. And again, we're in the world of electronics now where things happen much faster than they did in the mechanical world.
I have a question regarding the right to repair. Of course, the Auto Care Association. There are many automotive associations out there, different stakeholders from our farmers in the Midwest that are getting locked out of their tractors and their combines because they're not allowed to fix their stuff if you will. Right to repair enables the automotive technician currently to have free-flowing data. Australia, at this point, is full-on right to repair that was passed. We seem to struggle here in the United States. What are your thoughts on right to repair? And will Tesla even show up to the party regarding right to repair? I know you got a great relationship and you've been very progressive there, but some of us in the industry are a little worried about unfettered access responsibly to the data to fix and service these vehicles properly.
Well, yeah, good point. The complexity of these vehicles is much different than that internal combustion engine vehicle that basically a backyard mechanic could, repair and work on, get parts for, et cetera, et cetera. Nowadays, we have highly complex systems in these EVs, which they have intelligent door handles. There are, trunk control modules. Everything is part of firmware. And in order to replace something, you can't. You no longer go in and change a mechanical door handle. You have to then realign that with firmware, which now requires a different set of tools. You have to have software. You have to have some knowledge on how to use it. And although the manufacturers may be forced to make that kind of or those kind of tools available, the training manuals on how to use it may not be part of that package. Tesla currently has a Toolbox subscription. Toolbox is the name for their software that allows you to do certain work with the car. And they make that available on a subscription basis. But you really have to know how to use it in order to be effective with it.
Right.
And that's where the problem occurs with this right to repair. They may give you the tool or make it available on a pay-for-view basis, but who's going to give you the skills to use it?
Yeah. I mean, there is training, and I totally understand. We're not in a plug-and-play world anymore. We're currently seeing bus networks and systems and how to communicate on those. Do you see, if you could, we have a few minutes left, do you see a solution to this right to repair? I mean, the aftermarket wants to take the responsibility of being stewards of that data. If you had to sit down with these OEs and you represented the aftermarket, how do you see a solution that is mindful and respectful? Because we know the aftermarket is servicing the bulk of these vehicles when they're out of warranty.
Well, what do I see of for the future of the right to repair? I don't have an answer to that. I wish I did.
Yeah, I'm kind of with you on that, but I know ultimately as we progress with technology, we're going to need more of that free-flowing information. It'd be interesting to see how that parlays out in the future. Pete, would you like to give us a website? Anything else that you have up and coming that we can share with the folks?
The website, grubermotors.com. Our YouTube channel is Gruber Motors. And you can find us on TikTok, Instagram, YouTube Shorts, TikTok. There are a bunch of others. My social media team usually reminds me. But what I would suggest to anybody listening, if you really want to get in tune with what's going on in the independent repair space, our YouTube channel has over 200 videos. A lot of them are tutorials. The website has things like newsletters that will teach you about Tesla Roadsters in the early days of Tesla. And we've spent years developing this kind of content for our audience.
That is awesome. And, of course, catch the Gruber Motors podcast on Spotify. Always chock full of great information. Thank you so much, Pete, for spending time with us. We'd like to work out a visit to the garage here in our backyard, and would love to come visit the facility and meet up.
I highly recommend that because we get at least one tour per day on average, and people are just amazed what takes place behind the scenes in a Tesla repair shop.
Wow. Amazing. Thank you so much. Pete Gruber, Gruber Motors. Awesome. Thank you so much.
All right. Take care. Bye-bye.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of information. Some scary information. I mean, some of you are saying, well, we have time yet. That's not going to happen. Yeah. But we got to be forward-thinking. And, of course, Pete Gruber and his team are doing that at Gruber Motors. I appreciate you guys hanging out with us. As I tell you every week, be safe, hug each other, and never forget to hug a mechanic.